After Stalin's death in 1953, following a brief power struggle, Nikita Khrushchev came to power. Soon after, he initiated significant changes in the country. Despite his own role in bloody repressions, Khrushchev condemned the personality cult and the horrific terror of his predecessor's regime. Many people felt the wind of change and hoped for the country's liberalization. Some brave and venturous people, commonly highly educated urban intellectuals, saw those times as an opportunity to fight for their civil rights and those of their fellow countrymen. Although most of them were in for a rude awakening and ended up in prison, psychiatric hospital or immigration, we still remember many of their names: Andrei Sinyavsky, Yuli Daniel, Nobel laureates Andrei Sakharov and Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and many others. Those are known as Soviet dissidents. There was, however, a much more organized, active and efficient Soviet dissident movement, marginalized and oppressed in its time and much forgotten today. I am talking about religious dissidents, and specifically evangelical Christians. After the partial liberalization of religion in 1943, the Russian Orthodox Church was allowed to elect a new patriarch and resume her activities, and 2 Protestant churches were allowed to register as well: Evangelical Christian Baptists and Seventh-day Adventists. All 3 were put under strict control by the state through specific departments curated by the KGB. When Nikita Khrushchev came to power, among many other reforms, he initiated a campaign against religion, which he saw as hindering progress. The legally registered communities had to comply with the prohibitive legislation that forbade missions, baptism of the youth, religious education, and even church attendance by children. This pressure eventually led to the split of the Baptist community into the obedient majority and reformed groups that refused to comply and went underground. Eventually, most of the anti-religious campaign was directed against those unregistered Baptists and never registered Pentecostals. Persecutions included prison terms for church leaders and active evangelists, large discrimination of believers in education and job market, taking away custody of children, and even demolition of buildings where underground services were held, many of which were homes for some families. In turn, evangelicals unfolded unprecedented dissident activities. When it comes to Baptists, their response was the most organized and significant. Just like secular dissidents, initially they tried petitioning the state authorities, appealing to freedom of conscience guaranteed by the Constitution. These petitions and open letters were signed by hundreds of believers during church services. Most of these letters either received formal responses claiming that the prisoners were sentenced for breaking the law and the rights of believers in the Soviet Union were not violated, or no response at all. In 1965, the delegation of underground Baptists managed to have a meeting with the de jure head of the state, Anastas Mikoyan. They provided him with materials documenting the discrimination and harassment of believers, and he promised to take them under serious consideration. However, the next year he would lose his powerful position, and the Baptist efforts were in vain. In May 1966, about 500 Baptists gathered next to the building of the party's Central Committee to protest. They came by different means, by buses, trains or cars, to not be intercepted by the police. They started singing hymns and praying publicly, but soon after, the police and KGB units arrived, beat many of them up, and took them away in buses. Most were sentenced to fines or 15 days in jail, but the leaders got prison sentences. The Baptist underground, however, kept growing. Apart from congregating in secure locations, they established a wide network of dissident activity: underground print shops, journals, and secret hideouts for their leaders. In cooperation with foreign churches and NGOs, Soviet believers received smuggled Bibles and religious literature and sent back letters describing their situation, oftentimes with photo and video materials. Congregations consolidated around the families of their imprisoned brothers and sisters and provided for them as much as they could. The Baptist children of prisoners always had shelter, food, basic clothes, and school utensils. This support was provided by the Council of the Relatives of Prisoners, founded by wives and mothers of incarcerated Baptist leaders. They were printing petitions, coordinating family supports, and publishing a regular bulletin for the congregations where they listed all details about prisoners and their home addresses to send help to their families. Needless to say, police and the KGB hunted down the locations and individuals, seized their literature and printers, and imprisoned everyone involved. One of the church leaders, Georgy Vins, was stripped of his Soviet citizenship and sent to the US with a group of dissidents exchanged for 2 Soviet spies. Allegedly, President Jimmy Carter, a Baptist himself, personally asked for Vins. The formidable network of dissidents' resistance was widely recognized in evangelical circles abroad. Many tried to help their persecuted Soviet brothers and sisters with literature, moral support, or simply raising awareness. In the 1970s, during the campaign for Jewish immigration, many Pentecostals tried to claim their rights to leave the country. They could not claim any legal ground and were repeatedly denied. Only 2 families, however, managed to leave after spending 5 years in the United States Embassy in Moscow and much negotiation between the diplomats of both countries. After the liberalization of religion during the perestroika in the 1980s, underground Soviet Christians started actively evangelizing all over the country. The memory of persecutions and underground resistance, however, is still very much alive in Baptist and Pentecostal communities, although many of the witnesses and participants are gone. Please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. I see you all next time.